session, given that it went so beautifully with the session this morning. For this session, we have two wonderful, amazing moderators who have been working on pulling together the strands on this challenging and beautiful topic of migration. We have William Calvo, who is a professor at the University of Michigan, focusing his work on Latinx, and he's very humbly putting together the batteries in the mouse so that the PowerPoint works. And he's been also just a wonderful, wonderful team member in thinking about the configuration of the Focolare Forum for Dialogue and Culture. And we have Lori Chesser, who is an attorney. When we wanted to see who are all the attorneys who are working on these issues, Lori Chesser is an attorney working on questions of migration from Des Moines. And also a longtime member of the Focolare, one of the volunteers who are really the backbone of our engagement with social structures, with the challenges, the big challenges of humanity. So we're really, really delighted that they have been able to work together on this session. I'd also mention Lori has an article from Living City that we've made copies of that just appeared in the December issue. And it's out, the copies are out on the table, and it's a fabulous, fabulous overview. So if you would like, feel free to pick up, we've got about 200 copies of that, so there should be a copy for everybody, or could probably take a couple extra too if you'd like. So without further ado, we'll turn it over to William and Lori.
Always technical, right? Always technical.
Oh, there is another one here. Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay.
I'll have this one then.
Can you hear me? Perfect.
There we go. And this one too, yes? Okay, very good.
Perfect. Well, good morning, everybody. We're going to, good afternoon. Clearly, I need my coffee, So we have this wonderful task to talk a little bit about migration. Now, the great thing is that we have been talking a little bit about this than yesterday, that we will have a little mix of different things. A little bit about theory, not really theory, so things that we have learned together about migration, some of the things that are particular about the experience of the United States or North America. We will have some sharing experience, and then we will have a little way to talk and do a little exercise. The microphone needs to be closer. In the middle. Up here. Okay. That one better? Maybe I should be like this. That's very good for my neck, I guess. So maybe we can start. We start with the video.
Living in a border city, migration isn't an unusual thing. People come and go through the international border regularly. But it's also always been a very divisive issue, with people who are for it and others who are against it. Recently, things have become even more divisive, with talks of building a wall, securing the border, painting the image of migration as a threat that needs to be handled. And even more recently, with all the news about this caravan of migrants traveling from the different parts of Central America. Some of the rhetoric that's been used has been dehumanizing, labeling this caravan as an invasion, with fears that it's a herd made up of criminals coming to wreak havoc on the US. Which bothers me because this point of view on things feels apathetic. It ignores the fact that poverty and violence are real global issues. I think the reality is that these people are in dire need because of those issues. The problem, in all its complexity, can only be solved collectively because we have to work together on every side.
Es inimaginable lo que estas personas están viviendo. Nos dimos la tarea de visitar a los inmigrantes, escucharlos y conocer la verdad detrás de todo esto. Esta gente está siendo amenazada, juzgada y atacada violentamente después de sufrir un largo camino de hambre y de sufrimiento. Ellos escapan de una realidad que tú y yo no conocemos. Están escapando de una dictadura donde solo aquellos con dinero tienen acceso a la educación y todos los demás solamente tienen acceso a la delincuencia. Lo último que debemos hacer es denigrarlos, porque también son seres humanos, como lo eres tú, como lo soy yo. Y todos merecemos respeto, porque esa es la manera para lograr nuestro objetivo, un mundo unido.
This is my family. You see my mom. Mom is where? Into here. This is my mom, my aunts, my uncles. And some of we are an immigrant family. I was born in Costa Rica. They live right very close here. They live in Phoenix, Arizona. Some of them have documentation, some of them don't. So the issue of migration is also very close to me personally, but also because of the research that I do in terms of migrant communities and the migration of faith. So this is part of my background, not just as somebody who have migrated, but also for somebody that had the experience of doing research about migration.
And this is not my family, but it's a little closer to my immigration experience. And I think I just want to share it really briefly because I think it represents the immigration experience of a lot of people in the room. Obviously, we have a diversity of immigration experiences in the room. But it's always good to reflect on those as we start talking about this issue. So the closest immigration story I know, closest in time, is on my mother's side. Her father was born here, but he was the youngest of 4 children, and everyone else was born in Bohemia, really, not Germany. But that's okay, but whatever Bohemia was, I don't even know. But in any event, they spoke German, and they came, and I don't even know what my great-grandfather did, but we have the immigrant trunk. So they came on a ship with 1 trunk, 3 kids, and the story I was always told, I've never met him, so maybe someday when I meet him, he's going to be really mad at me because I keep telling this story, is that he left the home country to evade the draft, basically. He didn't want to fight in a war. And so he brought his family, and he came here. My grandfather was a carpenter, and he raised his 4 children in the same house he grew up in Nebraska City, Nebraska. My mother went to college, and I went to college and law school. One of her brothers became president of Portland State University. So I always offer that as just a reflection on a very typical immigration experience.
So the question for us is, and this is a little exercise that we want you guys to do, what are your interests in this topic? So turn around with the people who are in your right, and within 2 you talk, and in 10 words, tell the other person why you're interested in this topic. How do you ever get here to this particular table and discussion? So let's give a few minutes, and so talk with somebody about how do you come to here?
More videos.
Videos?
Going to use more videos.
Yes, there are some good videos. And I have the videos for you if you want to.
No. We can see.
Okay. Should we call them now? Okay. So wonderful to hear everybody so much engaged in this discussion. You know, and the next question for us, you know, as you all have been talking, and it may be because you are yourself an immigrant, or because your family has been an immigrant, or you know a friend, or because your parishes, or your communities, or your job have been impacted by migration, it has been a topic who have affecting us in many different ways. But the question for us here in the North America, is particularly in the United States, why should we talk about migration? I mean, that's an essential question for us. And in many ways we say, and this is Roy who say, because we believe in love, you know? And in other words, it's not only possible, but it's on its way. So part of the project, you know, that we're trying to figure out is how this kind of united world may look like, also in relation to how do we connect to each other and the process of migration. So you will see something, you will see during the presentation, sometimes will appear numbers, and it's something that we will say like what it can be some of the contributions that we have to offer to the discussion. So in many ways, the presentation on migration, it had to do a little bit about sharing our experience together, but also to learn how to talk with people outside about the experience of migration. Okay, so the big question for us is what kind of world we wanna build, you know? Now, in the meantime, as this new world is coming, you know, we need to figure out what to do with what we have, okay? How do we engage in dialogue? How do we deal with anxieties, the complications, the things who are not subtle? Because until we get there, you know, and everybody care for each other and love each other, we're still in a world which is in transition. So we need to figure out how to move forward together.
So, you know, why is it so hard to talk about immigration today? And I want to just share as we're getting into this, and again, we're not up here to tell you what to think about anything. We just want to bring some of these thoughts and perspectives to you. And I thought when we were thinking about this, I was thinking about how hard it is to talk about immigration. And I wanted to give a brief experience of that from my own experience. So when I started practicing law 30-some years ago, I never dreamed I'd be an immigration lawyer. I was a corporate lawyer, but I just by chance fell into being an immigration lawyer. And at first I was working with, you know, I mean, I still work mostly with people who are going through the legal system, you know, every company presidents to doctors to, you know, engineers to, you know, people that married someone from another country. And I didn't think too much about illegal immigration or about that whole issue. But then I started to see some of the gaps and the things that were happening, how the law was inadequate in so many ways. And I started to get involved in advocacy. And when I got involved in advocacy, I started to meet people with different perspectives, people from faith communities who were working on this, nonprofits who were working on this. I started to meet people who were who were not here legally, people who, came from a lot of different perspectives. And I started to realize that it's true. We have to address the inadequacies of the legal system, not just for the people, that like for our economic needs or whatever those kind of things are, family reunification, but also for people that have found themselves caught in these gaps that our law had. So I started to get very passionate about this. And just, so you understand, I work in a, fairly large law firm for Iowa standards, 75, 80 lawyers. And, we try to do socially good things, but we're not a nonprofit law firm, we're a for-profit law firm. And, but I started to get involved in this advocacy and go to things, be with the people, talk to congressional people, whatever, and I started to get very passionate about this. So then, of course, I'm going home and I'm sharing with my husband, about these things. And, we're a mixed marriage. I'm a Democrat, he's a Republican. We we come from different perspectives, but, pretty much we'd worked through other issues, but this one, I was really passionate, getting very passionate about. And so I'm telling him all these things, and he's not really quite seen it my way exactly. And, I was very frustrated with that. And I became really frustrated with it because I felt like I could not communicate to him what I was seeing, and why didn't he understand? And I wasn't, I just kept kind of feeling frustrated with that. But to give him a lot of credit, he's also, in the focal area, and to give him a lot of credit, he was patient and listened. Talk about this, did not cut me off, did not say, that's nice, honey, let's go watch football or something like that. He did listen to me and tried to understand and was engaging with me, which I maybe didn't appreciate at the time, but it was a good step. I remember at one point, we were invited to a party at the house of two young men that I had met through this advocacy. And we go over to this party and, we pull up and it's like a house we might have gone to a party at college, but not a house I would go to a party in now, kind of a different, neighborhood, a different whatever. And we were like, okay, I guess we're gonna do this. And, we went in and it was a lovely, lovely people, lovely party. And there were a lot of people from different places there, and we got talking to this man from Mexico, and he was saying, yeah, I'm Mexican, but I love America, and my kids, they don't even want to learn Spanish, but but I love America, that's okay. Anyway, we had a nice conversation, and I noticed after that party, John sort of, my husband sort of, I'm not saying it like, changed his mind, like it wasn't he was anti-immigrant or anything like that, he just had a little different point of view. But I think he saw what I was seeing, and he started to listen to me more. And when he started listening to me, I started listening to him. And that was the key, right? Because I had been so passionate about this, I didn't want to hear another side. He had very valid points, but I wasn't ready to listen because I was really caught up in what I was learning, what I was, the people I was meeting. And, so he started to listen more, and we came, I think, over the years now, have come to a very good understanding. In fact, and not that he just came over to my side, that's not what I'm talking about. It was more that I became a more well-rounded, had a more well-rounded understanding of the issues, the nuances, the complexities. It made me a much better advocate in this situation. And just real quick to finish off, I'll just say just the other day, we were talking to someone who made this sort of outrageous comment about immigrants. And before my mouth could open, John said, oh, that's just not true. And, was very nicely, but was saying to this woman, that's not happening, and, you really need to think about it a different way. And I thought, wow, we've really come full circle here by that experience. But, not to minimize the difficulty, but just to give you hope that it's hard, but we can do it. So, maybe just bringing up a few reasons, William, why it's hard, besides just our passions and our inability to listen, there's other reasons, right?
Yeah, for example, it may be racial tensions that you see around. People may think, oh, if I talk about immigration, people may think that I'm this or that, It can be anxieties about economy, the impact that these people may have in the economy or your local community or your jobs. There is a lot of divisive language. people may be concerned about the lack or losing a national identity because of new people who are coming. And then because changes are rapidly and sometimes so fast that people cannot even adapt to what's happening around them, you know? So in that sense, we have this phrase from the World Council of Churches. They met 2 years ago now. We have a conference on migration. It was called Migration, Xenophobia, and National Movements. And they say something like that. We recognize that the concerns of many individuals or communities who felt threatened by migrants, whether for security, economic, or cultural identity reasons, had to be acknowledged and examined. We wish to be in genuine dialogue with all of those who hold such concerns, but based upon our principles, they say, you know, we seek to raise a narrative of love and hope against the narrative of hate and fear. And I think that's part of the project that we're trying to do today, trying to engage in this kind of different narrative about the experience, who move beyond just the fear of the encounter. I love this phrase. She was one of my professors, Chela Sandoval, and she said, the hermeneutics of love as a positive guiding strategy. So love, when we talk about love, it's not this kind of feel-good thing, but you say it's a purpose guiding strategy that is interested in challenging all forms of social and psychological, inequalities. That's the kind of project that we're into. And then her name is Gloria Saldúa, is somebody who is from the border, right here from Texas. And she says something very, very inside. She said, the border is una herida abierta, is an open wound, where the third world grates against the first and bleeds. And before the scar form, it emanates again, the lifeblood of two worlds merging to form a third country, a border culture. Now, for us, it's an important metaphor because it makes us think about this experience of migration or this kind of experience also as a wound that we need to deal. It's a wound which is affecting humanity. So in this case, it's an open wound that is not only real, but it's very much painful. I mean, we need to recognize that pain is part of that kind of experience because people are forced to leave, or people need to rearrange themselves, or because people don't know how to deal with the changes. But also something very interesting, at least in terms of the contribution of the movement, is the idea that this wound is not individual, but it's a collective trial of humanity. So we need to negotiate this thing, recognize it, but then also trying to figure out how to do about it, okay? Another thing that we learned is that when people normally talk about the border or migration, people may think that it's an issue that is relegated only to the US-Mexico border or to a border, But we know, at least from social sciences, that migration and borders of these wounds are not fixed or stable, but for the contrary, they're very much mobile and porous. So for example, the individual, sometimes the border may be the US-Mexico border, but the border may be a person or a place. So for example, when you think about the people who are waiting for a job outside Home Depot in Louisiana, that might be the border for the individuals and for the community, because that's the place when you encounter the differences, okay? So for example, the picture that you see, so the picture in the top is from a migrant center in Mexico, South Mexico, and you have a map who help the individuals to figure out how to move. And then you have here a picture for North Italy, Trent, and this is in a plaza when you have some of the Italian migrants. So most of the people, when they think about migration or the border in Italy, they think about the south, but it may happen in the north as well. So think about the border in a more kind of complicated space, who is mobile. And for this one, we would like to invite Christian Piazza to tell us a little bit about the experience that you guys have from Los Angeles and Mexicali. So the microphone is here.
Oh, yeah. Good afternoon. I feel like a professor right now, just being in front of. Feels good to be on the other side of this. So my name is Chris. I live in Anaheim, California, which is in Orange County, 40 minutes from like LA. And I'm a youth of the Focolare. I study journalism, third-year student at the University of California, Irvine. And Carlos Bajo asked me to share an experience of coming together across the border, and you'll understand why as I show you this. So a series of vertical borders that stretch for 1,954 miles across desert terrains and urban areas separate the United States of America and Mexico. It does not only divide two countries, but also families and lifestyles. However, people living around the border area do not let that stop them from building relationships with the ones on the other side, which at times proves to be special. So there's the board. Joseph Capaccio grew up in a family of Filipino immigrants involved in the Focolare movement in San Diego, California. The border has always been a stone's throw away from where he has spent his life. Immigration talk has always been present in his daily life, whether it be at school or on the news, which polarized communities. Joseph only knew that life was considerably different across the border, but he always questioned what else happened on the other side. Noe Herrera and Aaron Torres, both youth of the Focolare, grew up in the Mexican border town of Mexicali, which is 2 hours east of San Diego and its Mexican counterpart, Tijuana. For them, the border is part of their daily life. Noe would wake up at 5 a.m. to get in line to cross the border for school, which was located in the US. Aaron would cross often to see friends or grab a bite at the nearest In-N-Out. They too had seen the effects of immigration as people go to great lengths to get into the US for a crack of the American dream. Yet, going beyond policies, they both knew there was hope for positive change. In 2017, Joseph and Noe met for the first time. Being youths of the Focolare, it was decided to involve the other young adults that also lived in California and Baja California into this unique relationship, such as myself. It was the beginning of a unit, a small group of Focolare youth living near each other that meet regularly. This created an opportunity to engage in a cross-border dialogue and establish a deeper understanding of friendship. We began to share moments together on both sides of the border. Every May for the past 3 years, Mexicali hosts the Run for Unity, a worldwide relay race promoted by the Teens for Unity of the Focolare, an event that has turned binational where two groups run along both sides of the border, eventually meeting together at the port of entry. They switch flags, and the group running on the American side crosses over into Mexico, where they finish in one large group, promoting peace along the way. In addition to interacting with immigration camps in Tijuana, like you saw in the video before, we are also involved with other organizations that advocate human rights and social justice. For instance, we participated in a walk set up by A21 that strive to eliminate modern-day human trafficking, and they have walks all around the world, and we decided to attend one in Mexicali. Not only do we build connections with them, but also we allow ourselves to be educated on how to help in our own communities. Building on that idea that unity has many faces, we're continuing to find ways to promote this unique relationship through our actions. It has been evident that the message of being one can be shared to everyone from every background. A way that we, as a unit, have decided to share this message through inclusivity is by creating a podcast for everybody. The podcast name, To Get There, is where we will share stories on how to make a better world together. It will become a platform for any person to share how they build unity in their communities through their work, ministry, or personal stories. This cross-border relationship that young adults with a vision of a united world created has provided many fruits. It is an example of how youth go beyond their daily challenges to seek understanding. It has created friendships that will last a lifetime. It has enhanced our perspectives on situations like the border to embody everybody that is infected. Lastly, it exemplifies not everything needs a law or policy. Rather, it just needs a bit of universal brotherhood and sisterhood. Thank you.
I think one of the things that is important also to remember is that we're talking about also a huge transformation in terms of the society that we live today. For example, since 2014, most children born in the United States were non-white or mixed race. Okay? Today, over 51% of all children under the age of 15 are mixed race or not white. So what we're trying to say is that this transformation is coming in a speed beyond our own expectations. You know, so talking about migration is not only about the mobilization of people, but also about racial relations among us. And this is the society that we are living, and this is the society. So somebody said, the best thing you can do for the youth is to help them talk about difference. This is part of the thing that we want to do today.
And it's also important to remember that people have always immigrated. This chart is really interesting, and if anybody wants these, I'm sure we could share this PowerPoint if you want to study it later, but just to see that migration is just human. It's the way of being human. People all have migrated throughout history. And so that's also something to think about now. While Catholic social teaching says we have the right to control our borders, if we had perfect control of our borders, none of us would probably be anywhere we are. It's just, if you look at it back through history, it's interesting that way. But, we look at the situation today, and there is something new that's happening today in terms of the mass migration that's happening all over the world.
And then something very interesting is that all major religions, in one way or the other, talk about the experience of migration. And here it is a chart. I don't know, maybe the light we can be a little dim, but you will see a little bit of the experience of migration globally as is happening right now. So you will see a few things already. One, that some countries, for example, India, may migrate completely to the other side and come to the United Kingdom, but then that can also migrate to other places in West Asia. Where we have experience like in the Soviet Union, where most of that migration happened within the same, And then we have other countries like India and Indonesia who move very close to the Philippines and Malaysia, but also can do the experience to move to the other side and other places. So something that we're seeing here, it is a massive migration of people everywhere. See the next one. So we understand that it's the whole world. Now, this is part, I would say, a huge insight, because a lot of time when we think about migration in the United States, it's very much tinted as if we were the only one experiencing the pain, or we were the only one. But we're just one of all the other countries around the world who is experiencing this one. One of the contributions that we bring is this kind of global perspective of the experience of migration. Especially because for us, the question is, what is this global phenomenon? It's trying to tell us as humanity. There is no way that humanity is going through such a huge transformation at this level, and there is not something behind to trying to tell us that we need to do something about it. Okay? I think one of the things that we remind ourselves is that this is about people and humanity journey. Sometimes in the movement we call it the holy journey. So in the holy part we will say it is a journey that we have embraced all together. We want it or not, and it's a global phenomenon. Just to say also, this experience of trying to figure out the impact of migration is not something, for example, in terms of the folklore movement that we say from the outside. Even the movement itself is trying to figure out what is happening. So one of the experiences that we're doing right now is putting together a questionnaire, and we just start with a project. But one of the things that we start to figure out is that 83% of the people around the movement say they have experienced in their own country a mobilization of members of the movement. So what I try, and I say this one, to bring the movement also as one of those participants of this experience. So we all together, include the movement, trying to figure out what did that mean for us. We had done good things, but sometimes we can also make mistakes. So we're trying to figure out how to improve this relationship in terms of migration.
Yeah, and the other thing, just to remember that migration does look and feel different depending on where it is. And, you know, in the United States, we have a certain history of immigration. Some other places, although they have, you know, historically a history, maybe this is a new phenomenon for them in most recent history. And so a lot of times people ask me when I do talks, what can we learn from other countries and that kind of thing. And I do think we have a special responsibility here in the United States, because I always tell them, other countries are looking to us about how to handle this, because we have this special relationship with immigration. But, you know, on the other hand, we have to realize that although we in the United States, and I think they were talking about how Canada yesterday benefits from immigration, on the other hand, migration does have effects. You know, it has, well, I should say, it has good effects. It has sometimes cultural revival effects, as we're saying, and we can talk about that more, but you know how it's helped, I think, in Canada. They were talking about that in Canada yesterday, how it's invigorated communities around Iowa. I know invigorated some of our rural communities because of migration. But we have to remember also that it can be cultural genocide, in the sense that if everyone leaves their countries and their culture is subsumed in our culture, they don't have their culture left anymore. And so it's interesting to think about that both ways. And sometimes in the press we hear about it the other way, saying a migrant's going to come and take over our culture, but that's not really our lived experience so much as the other type of cultural genocide. Is a new concept to think about.
Yeah, it's so interesting because, for example, during one of the conference, the people in the Middle East was trying to tell us, listen, in some of our towns, all the doctors, all the teachers, all the artists, they have left, and nothing is left behind. So we need to understand, you know, that it's way more complex. It also means that, of course, we know that God works in mysterious way. I mean, it will create different cultural production, but it also this kind of responsibility that we have for the goodwill of everybody. You know, so the big question is, why do people migrate in the first place? So we would like to invite also another experience from Dania and Aida. And you guys are here? Perfect. Where are your parents?
Hello,
Hello, everybody.
my name is Dania.
And I'm Ida.
We're sisters.
And our parents are down here, Agustin and Angela.
We met the Focolari in El Salvador back in 1983. We grew up with the ideal and participating in Gen 4 meetings with the young children's. They were young children meetings. We participated in summer retreats like Mariapolis and other Focolari events. We were very close to both of our parents' side of the family, which also brought us a lot of happiness to our lives. Our parents were both professionals too, and gave us many opportunities to learn and grow. But we also encounter many difficulties. We also experienced many difficulties. So Ida will tell you a little bit more.
So we lived through a major earthquake and a civil war during our childhood. Bombs were the full beginning of our interaction of the war in the capital city of El Salvador. In November of 1989, we experienced a life-changing event. There was a loud sound that shook our home. My brother, my younger brother, and I, being always very, very curious, walked for less than a block to see what was going on. We quickly found small children that were dismembered by the bomb that had exploded between the two homes. It had fallen right in between them. We ran back home and took shelter. The bombs and bullets began and continued throughout the days. After 1 week, our leftover food was scarce. So one vivid and unforgettable moment was seeing our mother slither her way down to a store about 50 meters from our house. I cried and cried, seeing her leave and praying that I would see her come back. The crossfire was so heavy. I remember seeing the colors red and blue going right, and my mom slithering through. I could hear voices in the background, very distant, of the military and the guerrillas screaming to give orders back and forth. So a moment of pause in my childhood life. The seconds and minutes felt like forever in a distant. I see our mother slithering back, holding the box of cereal in her arm. The joy was indescribable. After a day, the country went silent and black. Guided by the silence of gunfire, our family decided to flee. Looking back at our home shattered of bullets, we left quietly in our car. However, we were stopped at every turn with blockades, rifles pointing to ahead, because they couldn't tell if we were guerrilla or part of the military. Even though my dad ripped his shirt off, a white shirt, put it outside in the antenna of the car, showing proof that we were in peace. This moment was about life or death. We needed to hurry before the curfews began at 6 p.m. That meant to continue the attacks. The streets were quiet and deserted. The need to run and survival was crucial. We finally made it out. Our father returned to the city of gunfire to rescue 5 or 6 Focolarini and bring them to shelter into a Franciscan seminary. We stayed at our grandma's house for a while, as well as other Focolare members. This was the less dangerous city where my grandmother lived. The Civil War had such a huge impact on our family and our migration to find a better and peaceful living condition. Going through the Civil War in El Salvador was a road of an unforeseen future for us. We prayed and left it in God's hands.
Being part of the Focolare community, through our lives have really shaped us to who we are. Coming together with visas as family, we continue facing roadblocks. In a new country with new people, new language, new jobs, new schools, and no family. We were starting all over, united and strong. Within a week of arriving to Los Angeles in 1991, we were excited to look for and quickly found the Focolare. We were welcomed with open arms, just as long-lost family members would. The language differences were no barriers. The warm feeling of being accepted and loved was beautiful. We participated in many events as children, even though we didn't have much. One example was transportation. Focolarinis and Focolare members would kindly give us rides constantly to and from events. It was wonderful for us to witness this unconditional love found in our Focolare family.
So that was beautiful, going from El Salvador to Los Angeles, and then now being here in San Antonio. After the recession that happened in California, we as a family decided to move here in 2009, 2010. So currently my sister and I are holding job positions that are incredible to even imagine. My sister is currently an an accountant in the mental health field, where she services, through the financial side, but also years of other experiences that happen in the department. I currently hold the director position of multilingual education at my school district. I have been working as an educator for years, 22 years now, and I have always worked in a very poor district. But currently I am working in a very wealthy district where the population is very different, the poor districts. So being the director of multilingual education, it is a huge job for me in a place where beliefs and mindsets are very different than a poor district. So whenever I am presenting or bringing up any type of services that we need to provide, I constantly have to pinch myself and think, oh my goodness, I'm here. I have decisions to make or problems to solve or mind shifts that need to be changed when we go back to this. So it is a constant, ongoing love, constant. Sometimes it's a challenge for all of us to see life with new eyes every day. But what keeps us grounded and mindful is also due to that second chance that we were given in life. And also that concrete love and care that we have encountered throughout our lifetime, thanks to the Focolare movement. Seeing difficulties as learning opportunities has made us spiritually stronger. Our parents' vision of removing us from harm has geared us to work hard, to be there for others, and also encourage us further in the good. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Pope Francis reminds us that not only does this concern in terms of migration for those looking for dignified work or better living conditions, but also men and women and elderly and children who are forced to leave their homes in the hope of finding safety, peace, and security, caused by violence, poverty, environmental conditions, as well as the negative effects of globalization. So we know that the forces who push people out of the country are many. Sometimes we call them push and pull, factors. Sometimes it may be the environment, it may be gender discrimination, poverty, environmental conditions, as well as different conflicts and wars. But at the same time, in other countries, the wealth, the possibilities for jobs, access to education, even religious acceptance can be the factor who actually pull people in this direction. So we see that both sides of the spectrum of the migration is very much tied for this kind of condition or distinctions or the division or inequality among different nations. So, and those factors define very much how us, as the United States, and many nations, at least in cases in the United States, have approached immigration. So here is, we don't expect you to read all the elements because it's very difficult. I cannot even read it and I can't close. But you see a little chart which show you the different migrations happen at different periods. So you see that before the 1930s, most of the migration in the United States was an European migration. But then after, we will have a transformation where most of that will come from the Americas. At the same time, you see that in the 1930s, we have a particular event, the Great Depression. And the Great Depression have impact in what kind of legislation was moved forward in terms of dealing with people moving. So we need to see, and this is important to have a lawyer here, because we come to understand that even those constructs of what it means legal or illegal,
came, when Eastern Europeans came, and a lot of that when the Eastern Europeans came, Eastern and Southern Europeans came, was because people were Catholic, and that was threatening to the native population. And so if you read some of those things, you could read the same thing, you can see the comparison today. So and really after the Chinese Exclusion Act, we didn't have any other restrictions on immigration laws till the 1920s. So you can see that, the laws react to the social situation, and then the laws change the social situation. And it's a fascinating study of immigration law. If you ever want to take the time to do that, or you want to sit down with me for an hour or so, I can tell you all about it. But it's very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, for example, at one point, Italians and Irish, for example, was perceived as non-whites, and we will not think about that today. And Mexicans were perceived as white, and now we don't think about that today. So it's very interesting because those categories that we have, Jesse, we're talking about these labels, but those are actually labels, and they had changed in that relationship that we have with those labels over time. And the law had responded to those changes as well.
And I think when Doug was up here for the last panel, he said, one thing we can do is be involved in policy to try to change laws, because, and that's how I got involved, was trying to change the laws. And I just wanted to share, people say, well, if there's so many problems with the law right now, why don't we change it? And I wanted to share just a brief experience about my experience of trying to change these laws, which would also take several hours if you wanted to sit down with me and talk about the whole thing. But people do want to make changes in the laws, but we also have the challenge that people view things through their own, through their own lenses, and it's hard to come together on a complicated issue like this to agree how the law should be changed. So several years ago, we formed a coalition in Iowa to try to educate people about how the immigration law should be, could be changed, how it was lacking. And we had people from faith community, we had business community, we had nonprofits and advocacy groups, even law enforcement. We had a lot of people involved. They were all good people. They were all coming from a good place. They were all trying to help. But, unfortunately, we didn't have that sense of building the relationship that, say, thank God John and I had when we were trying to love each other in our marriage relationship and not fall apart because of this issue. When we encountered disagreements in this coalition, we didn't have that grounding of the relationship was the most important thing. Instead, it was what I want to accomplish is the most important thing.